Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about data analytics and artificial intelligence trends. We were just going over a state of the state, and I want to throw it over to you, Howard, at Databricks. Tell us a little bit, where does Databricks fit into this ecosystem? And give us a state of the state about what you're seeing across the community.
Yeah, thanks so much, Luke, and thank you to all the other panelists. Honored to be here. From a Databricks perspective, we're seeing what people like Kirsten and Tom have already said, that the data volumes are growing rapidly. But more importantly, the types of data that people are receiving today are full text, they're imagery. It's beyond the structured data that data warehouses handled so well for so many years. And so today, if you're trying to do evidence-based decision making, you've got to have the ability to analyze other data types besides the structured data. People have tried to do this with data warehouses and data clouds. It just doesn't work. And that's why Databricks has built this capability we call the Lakehouse. The Lakehouse is really the best of the data warehouse and the best capabilities of the data lake. And a lot of this has been incorporated in the DoD. Tom, you're probably very familiar with the DoD data decrees, which say, sharing has to be, fundamental to what we do. Instead of, need to know, it's need to share today. Cataloging the data, using open source and open storage technologies, secure access control and encrypting all of the data. Those are all incorporated into the DoD data decrees, and those are things that Databricks aligns really well with.
Yeah, super important. And again, I see this conversation talking about framework done. We're going up the value chain. Let's start talking about specific examples. Dr. Sim, I'm going to ask you first. Can you give us a specific example of an enabling capability that you'd like to highlight for the community?
Sure, Luke, absolutely. There are a variety of use cases, obviously.
Sure.
I think one is the National Center for Immunizations and Respiratory Diseases, NCIRD. They were largely the pioneers in adopting big data technology in the cloud space, as well as processing the high volume and variety of data related to COVID tests, immunizations, in conjunction with HHS and the HHS Protect system. So for COVID specifically, NCRD implemented a Lakehouse platform that received vaccine supply chain, distribution, provider, and administration data from over 100 plus data sources daily, and delivered curated data products within hours each day to facilitate public health decision-making and action at federal, state, and local levels. As I mentioned earlier, the platform has 1.2 billion vaccine administration records and serves over 50 different data products readily accessible via storefront for users to leverage using a wide variety of enterprise data visualization analytical tools. I think the opportunity, though, is, as been mentioned by the other panelists, we can do things in silos in a different way, but not only the sharing of data, but the sharing of algorithms. And so part of my role is to help with the culture change to encourage that sort of collaboration, the reuse and sharing of those algorithms, so that they can be applied to other situations, other public health emergencies, other responses, instead of being these large one-offs. So we're definitely going to take the lessons learned from NCIRD and our many number other programs and partners from the pandemic response and apply it to help rebuild and modernize our public health infrastructure.
Sounds fascinating. Thank you. Nicholas, how about at Snowflake? Can you give us an example of a specific program that perhaps you're helping to enable or have enabled that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. We have a couple of use cases that are really strong in the big data analytics space. Healthcare is one, and sort of more specifically in healthcare is fraud, waste, and abuse. A couple of our customers now were in a position where they were using open source software, which is a little bit more complex, takes more development dollars. There's a lot of engineering that has to happen. It's not a direct mapping. Software as a service has solved a lot of this. It's easy to go out and spend 20% of your budget to solve 80% of your problem by buying a commercial off-the-shelf product that gets you to that point where you can take 80% of your budget and solve that last 20%, which is your unique mission space. Trying to develop these really complex data pipelines in products that are more of a portfolio than a platform is really complex. So what we've tried to do at Snowflake is make it easier to get very, very close to that end solution, building out those data pipelines, getting all those data types into one place so they can be analyzed by a massive amount of parallel compute resources. And that really enables those big data analytics, that fraud, waste, and abuse analytics, those outliers we talked about earlier. That's really the key to getting that use case worked out.
Right. And fraud, waste, and abuse, super important in our community. Kirsten, you walked us through a whole bunch of different activities you have going on over there. It's sort of a top line. You want to highlight a specific use case that you'd like to bring to the attention of the community?
I'll highlight a program here. So I mentioned the analytics platform that we're building out. This is our cloud-hosted data and analytics platform. One of the first big programs that we initiated on this platform, it kind of got us a jump start into the cloud, was we found an opportunity to modernize our reporting infrastructure. We had a very old legacy reporting infrastructure. They were sort of PDF-based reports. There were about 530 of them. They were all sort of being individually used. They were kind of inconsistent in any type of governance around them. So we were able to
You're making my head spin.
I know.
Oh.
So we were able to implement an enterprise business intelligence solution and basically move all of these reports to our cloud infrastructure through this enterprise BI and implement data governance practices around this. So I think it was a great opportunity to get us an entrance into the cloud platform and teach governance through the modernization of these reports. So we basically consolidated these 530 reports down to about 50 and applied these our data governance and data standards to this. And then we could enable self-service reporting around certified data assets. So this was a great entrance to the cloud, as well as introducing data governance practices to the commission. It was also a great way to touch all of our program offices. So it was a really it really helped our ability to kind of build trust with what we were doing. And those reports touch on all manner of things. I mean, there's the operational tracking of statutory responsibilities, there's dam safety activities. We are a commission, so we facilitate a monthly commission meeting. So there's the coordination around that and the reporting around that. We're using it to track basic trading behavior. So there's a number of things those reports and certified data assets do for the self-service reporting. So that's the big program that I'd like to highlight.
Wow, sounds like a win-win-win-win. So that was fantastic. Really do appreciate that. Howard, how about at Databricks? Can you give us an example of a specific program, perhaps working with the various agencies that you'd like to highlight?
Well, I think Dr. Sim and Kirsten already have done that, but we'll share some others, and hopefully Tom and Dr. Gravis will do the same. For Databricks, I like to talk about work we started doing at Dr. Gravis's former agency, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, where they literally started out using Databricks as a data warehouse. They had some really difficult joins that were taking a long time. They had a ill-fated ETL process that would fail very frequently. And very frequently, the data that they were reporting to the executive branch was out of date because the ETL process took so long. So they started using Databricks as a data warehouse. This was several years ago. Today, that work has evolved pretty dramatically, where they're ingesting data from interviews for naturalization and visa applications, and they're finding fraud in there. They're making better use or better predictions in terms of which people are going to miss their appointments to make sure that the interviewers are more effectively used. And they're also analyzing the supporting documentation that comes in with these requests, birth certificates, passports, to find fraud within those. So they've really done an end-to-end modification of how they serve immigrants. And it starts with the data ingest with an e-filing system and goes all the way through the analysis of visual records, all using Databricks. It's quite an accomplishment that USCIS has had.
Fantastic use case and a very important mission over there at USCIS. Tom, how about at Department of Navy? Another very important mission. I know you have a lot of activity cooking over there. Give us an example of one program you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. And I think Kirsten and I are leading kind of parallel lives in this regard, and Alan as well. But so we stood up our enterprise data analytics platform about 2 years ago. And so the thing that I'd like to highlight about that is the lessons that we've learned for using the platform, implementing the platform, and actually coming up with the data. So at this stage, we have 83 documented use cases of folks that are using the platform to make some sort of analytics that drives decision and drives operational advantage, right? The interesting part here, though, is my very limited staff up at the CDO's office in the Secretariat. We only directly support about 9 of those use cases, which is really, really powerful, right? So what that means is we've been able to essentially, I don't want to say democratize because I don't necessarily like that word when it comes to data, but we've been able to empower the workforce and give them the tools they need to do their job. And when we talk to the early adopters about the platform, the thing that they say that draws them into the platform is they're finally able to do what they need to do with tools that make sense in an environment that is controlled and safe to operate in. And so what that means is we've kind of lowered that barrier to data access, but we've also kind of stopped people from going off and say, finding creative ways to do what they needed to do that are maybe not so above board when it comes to cybersecurity and a variety of other things. So the big lesson learned here is now pivoting away from just purely providing access to data. And Kirsten said something about certified data sets. So we've really taken on this massive initiative around mastering our data. And so what we found through the process so far, and we've been doing it for a couple of months, is there's actually a relatively small number of master records that drive a tremendous amount of analytics. And so we've formalized the process now. So now that we have a formalized intake process, we know how many people are using the platform and for what needs. From that process, it tells us what data sets that they plan to use for their analytics. And things change obviously when you get into your analytics. So we've actually started a number of initiatives right now across a variety of different waterfronts to really get after creating what we're calling the gold data sets. And it was Howard, because we have Databricks inside our platform as well, and that's really one of the key components to our analytics, is rather than providing Databricks through the ETL process, whatever data comes in, right, we want to master that data and stick it in the Databricks so people have a common view of data. And so it supports really important things we have ongoing right now. Obviously, we have a COVID and kind of the vestiges of what we're trying to wrap up there. We have a very large destructive behaviors analysis that's going on right now for a variety of different reasons to pull out. And I think it was Howard mentioned earlier, actually, about the data being unstructured, right? And so a lot of our reporting that comes from the field comes in completely unstructured data. And so we have to pull out sentiments, we have to pull out entities, we have to pull out information from text. And that's not necessarily hard, but it's not easy either in some regard, right? It's time consuming, you got to train your algorithms. And so then combining that data with highly structured data we have coming, say, from our ERP systems, from some of our training systems, right? And so what we're seeing is those cross-entity joins is where that magic comes from analytics. And so I can't say that we have a single initiative necessarily, but it's that kind of epiphany that we had around the use of the data and structuring the data in a way that allows people to have more value from it.
And being done with a very small but powerful, we'll call it small and mighty. I'm going to call it the CDO SEAL Team 6.
That's right.
Group.
That's right.
It's incredible what you're doing there. We really do appreciate it. Nick, how about at Pure Storage? Can you give us an example? We have all kinds of use cases that are oozing out of this panel at this point. Give us an example of a program that you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on Tom's thread. The Department of the Navy and Brett Vaughn, as the Chief AI Officer over there, deployed an AI as a service platform, and that continues to be pretty successful for us, and probably one of the best known infrastructure platforms, government owned, government operated. that we can talk about. Another one that we're really proud of is over the Virginia Tech Hume Center in the area of radio frequency machine learning for spectrum dominance. So those are, probably the prime time national security use cases that are published. We've had success within other agencies and across industry. Meta is our largest deployment, Facebook's AI Research Center. But we've been very fortunate to partner with great companies and great agencies in health sciences, genomics, pharmaceutical, financial services, autonomous vehicle areas as well. And really, this all goes right back to what Howard said. The nature of this data is unstructured. It's not your traditional row and column database. It's well-defined data sets. The beauty and the power of artificial intelligence models and algorithms is their ability to work with data the same way we do cognitively. So it's, again, you've got to be able to drive that data in order to get the maximum value out of it. And that's really where we focus.
Right. A lot of speeds and feeds, a lot of different formats, right? Including video and everything else. So we really do appreciate the capability that this technology brings to the table. And I think the first time I heard AI as a service, I think that's awesome. Matt, how about at Department of State? Give us an example of a program or a capability that you would like to highlight for the community.
Yeah, happy to. I'll highlight that our AI inventory is on the State Department website, so you can see a number of different use cases from a range of bureaus at the department. I'll tell you, the best part of working at the State Department is the diversity of mission. I met with the Special Envoy for Food Security a few weeks ago about data and analytics. I mean, who knew that we had a Special Envoy for Food Security? But it turns out critical, important mission, right? And
super important.
Yeah, and so I also want to point out there's kind of a dual mission when it comes to AI at the State Department, right? AI itself is a foreign policy issue, and then of course the use of AI internal to the department. And AI is a foreign policy issue. We engage internationally on emerging tech issues. The department has created a Bureau of Cyberspace and Digital Policy earlier this year to focus on that. And so that's a really important piece. My shop focuses on implementation within the department. And to give you an example, in that area would be cables analytics. The work of diplomacy is mainly carried out through language, right? In-person discussions, handshakes, right? And through written communication around the world. And so, as other panelists mentioned earlier, much of the department's data is unstructured. And so we have a number of NLP, natural language processing projects that are underway to automate the review and analysis of this kind of data, to provide insights to diplomats around the world. We have a challenge that's shared by a lot of us. We have colleagues who sift through an abundance of communication data. And so the more that we can accentuate the information that's most important for our coworkers' missions, the more effective and efficient we can be at administering foreign policy for the U.S.
Interesting dynamics there, and congratulations on that new unit that you all stood up. That's super important on this sort of global scale, if you will, from a State Department perspective. All right, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back in just a few minutes. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.